Hello, I'm Dan Katz from the University of Illinois. I'm going to talk about research software engineering. We care about research software engineering for a few reasons. One is because it's heavily funded. In the US, about 20% of NSF projects over 11 years topically discussed software in their abstracts, and 2 of the 3 main Department of Energy exascale computing project areas are research software, totaling about $15 billion of funding over this period. We can also look at publications where we find that software-intensive projects are a majority of current publications, and the most cited papers are those about methods and software. And we can ask researchers, and we find that greater than 90% of US and UK researchers use research software, 65% would not be able to do their research without it, and about 50% develop software as part of their research. Software is also a strategic research advantage. This is both direct in terms of being able to compete to develop software, and indirect in terms of the things that are enabled by that software and by having professional software developers. There's competition between institutions as well, where software can make a difference. For example, for faculty who want to go where they can be successful and be supported by research resources, including startup funding and facilities and staff. And it's also competition for projects that build or rely on software. It supports such competition. The UK REF was a system, or is a system, for assessing quality of research in UK higher education institutions. And this is tied to university funding, and this includes research that relies on software as well, in theory, as software itself, although there hasn't actually been much software that's been put into the REF. So research software primarily comes from research, and once it's developed, it needs to be maintained, which means that bugs need to be fixed, software needs to be updated as the dependencies, both software and hardware, change, and features need to be added as people need them. The researchers, who are often faculty, generally don't know good software practices, and software engineers generally don't understand the context of research. And students and postdocs generally don't know good software practices and don't stick around. Some postdocs do stay and learn, and they perhaps join staff, and maybe this is unofficial, maybe they're just a series of postdocs. And overall, we get to the point, hopefully, where we have staff with an understanding of research as well as software engineering skills. We can think of this as a difference between a craftsperson and a scholar to some extent. A scholar is an archetypical researcher who's driven to understand things to their fullest capacity, fullest capability. They find intellectually demanding problems, and they're curiosity driven, and they work on a topic until they understand it, and then they pass on that understanding through teaching. A craftsperson, on the other hand, is driven to create and leave behind an artifact that reifies their efforts in the field. They're unhappy when the thing that they make is fragile or ugly. They prefer to make things that explain themselves, and this work requires patience and pride in doing a job well. Scientific software requires people who combine the best of both of these roles. And I just want to point out that this is from a blog post from 2012, so this is not recent. In the collaborations workshop that the UK SSI ran in 2012, they found that lots of people were already doing this kind of work between these 2 different roles, but they didn't have a common title. In fact, there were 194 different job titles. Research software engineer was developed as the title that would unify these efforts. There was really no community. So associations and societies have developed since then to try to create community. And this was not a profession. But since then, we've developed career paths and structure that enable this to become a profession. So if we think about what is a research software engineer, we can think about somebody who's a researcher and they're really strong in research, but really weak in software engineering, or somebody who's a software engineer who's really strong in software engineering, but really weak in research. And we have researcher developers as well, who are very good at research and have some software engineering skill. But what we want to get is RSEs who are really more in the middle, having good research skills as well as good software engineering skills. And they don't necessarily fit in one place. They really are kind of a mix of people, depending on if their software engineering or their research skills are stronger. But they have both, is the key. So there have been 10 years of RSEs now. This movement to this term was born in the UK, as I mentioned, in the 2012 collaborations workshop. The UK RSE Association formed in 2013 with about 50 members, and it's now a society with about 550 dues-paying members and about a 3,600 member community. US RSE in the US has about 1,000 members, and As you can see in the chart, on the green part on the left, we have different groups forming over time and increasing. On the right part in purple, we have different activities that have happened, and we've grown to the point where there now are 7 organizations, and 2 more are currently forming in South Africa and Asia. In the middle, we've also had activities to bring leaders together and to run conferences to bring communities together. So the advantages of RSEs are that this leads to better software and more mature project management. RSEs have the idea, understanding of team organization and work organization and software organization and coding practices. And overall, this leads to better, more sustainable code and more efficient group coordination. RSEs provide institutional memory. As research software becomes more important and complex and costly, this expertise is valuable. The RSEs have longevity beyond individual projects and students, and they often are mobile across domains, so they can translate knowledge and artifacts across communities. And they build community expertise because they typically work on a series of grant-funded short projects. So their career is longer than any one project. They tend to develop into groups, and they have a form of matrix management often, where the principal investigator access changes over time and is funded by projects. And then there's also a group manager or some group structure that's fixed and is funded by overhead or tax on projects or institutional support. And this overall leads to a pool of experts and expertise that then can welcome others with shared interests and bring this skill up across the university. So to wrap up, software is becoming more recognized as an essential part of research. The support aspects of such software are not completely yet. The RSE movement is recognition of the need for support and professionalization. RSE associations provide community and context, legal, cultural, and funding. And we now have RSE groups within these organizations. RSEs and similarly data scientists don't work in a vacuum. They're key to common research activities such as hypothesis generation, study design, data analysis, and interpretation of results. And efforts to make this well understood and accepted by the scientific community at large are ongoing, and that's part of the reason that we're here as well. So thank you.